My favorite way to fall asleep at night while listening to ASMR is with my sleep phones. Stay tuned to the end of this video to learn more about these amazing little headphones and how you can purchase your own pair while supporting my channel at the same time. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Berlin in Germany. You can see the Germany in Germany there. Berlin is, of course, the capital of Germany. It's also, as you can see here, absolutely massive. It's actually the most populous city in the EU. I didn't know that before researching. It is entirely surrounded by the state of Brandenburg. And if you enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe because we'll be going over Brandenburg, I believe, at the end of May this year. So stay tuned for that. Berlin is located in what's known as the North German Plain, part of, I forgot what it's called, like the Great European North Plain or something like that. Pretty much the entirety of northern continental Europe, from like Netherlands across to the Baltic states, where it's quite low-lying, especially compared to like just south down there, where it gets extremely mountainous. So it's not mountainous, it's kind of hilly, but we'll talk about that in history actually. We're going to talk about a man-made hill in Berlin, but yeah, pretty flat compared to the rest of Europe. The Spree River runs through the city. Where is it? The Spree River. And Berlin is actually extremely green. There are many trees. I think I read it's like 20% forested, with places like the Tiergarten in the center, kind of like at Central Park. There's the Grunewald, like about here-ish. Can't see it on the map, but lots of other green places around the periphery of Berlin there. And since we're just talking about Berlin, there's not really much else to discuss about geography. All of the important sites to see we will talk about when we head to Google Earth. But we can talk about a couple of them right now because some of them are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Let me slide my tablet over. We can talk about the 3 UNESCO sites in Berlin. One of them is the #1 destination for me whenever I finally visit Berlin. I'm hitting this place first. It's Museum Island. I've always wanted to go here. The museum, as a social phenomenon, owes its origins to the Age of Enlightenment in the 18th century. The 5 museums on the Museumsinsel in Berlin, built between 1824 and 1930, are the realization of a visionary project and show the evolution of approaches to museum design over the course of the 20th century. Each museum was designed so as to establish an organic connection with the art it houses. The importance of the museum's collections, which trace the development of civilizations throughout the ages, is enhanced by the urban and architectural quality of the buildings. The buildings themselves are very beautiful. Of course, we're going to look at them on Google Earth, as you can see here. Very classic, like Greek Roman designs there. Mostly because some of them house some good Greek and Roman stuff, but yeah, there's the I guess I'll show you when we hit Google Earth. We don't need to go into details about the museum now when I'm going to go in depth about them later, but just know that there's a little island in the river that houses just museums, a really neat old church, and some little cafes and stuff for people to rest and relax while they're museum hopping. That's my number one destination. Oops, we don't need the full list, we need these. Palaces and Parks of Potsdam, which is great alliteration. Palaces and Parks of Potsdam. And Berlin. With 500 hectares of parks and 150 buildings constructed between 1730 and 1916, Potsdam's complex of palaces and parks forms an artistic whole, whose eclectic nature reinforces its sense of uniqueness. It extends into the district of Berlin-Zehlendorf, with the palaces and parks lining the banks of the river Havel and Lake, make sure I get this right, Glienicke, I hope. Voltaire stayed at the Sanssouci Palace, built under Frederick II, between 1745 and 1747. I'm pretty sure all the pictures in the gallery are of castles and palaces. I suppose there's a difference between a castle and a palace. If you know it, comment below. I'm pretty sure all the pictures in here are in Potsdam. So when we hit up Brandenburg in a couple weeks, months, we'll go over this more in depth. I think there's like 2 of the, 150 buildings. I think 2 of them are technically in Berlin. So we won't go over those too much. Lastly, we have, what's really interesting, the Berlin Modernism Housing Estates. Berlin Modernism Housing Estates. The property consists of 6 housing estates that testify to innovative housing policies from 1910 to 1933, especially during the Weimar Republic, when the city of Berlin was particularly progressive socially, politically, and culturally. The prosperity is an outstanding example of the building reform movement that contributed to improving housing and living conditions for people with low incomes through novel approaches to town planning, architecture, and garden design. The estates also provide exceptional examples of new urban and architectural typologies, featuring fresh design solutions, as well as technical and aesthetic innovations. Bruno Taut, Martin Wagner, and Walter Gropius were among the leading architects of these projects, which exercised considerable influence on the development of housing around the world. Let me show you some of these really neat buildings. They're super fun and colorful in some interesting shapes as well. We'll take a look at one of them. I think it's this one on Google Earth because it's really easy to spot from above. Yeah, so just because I probably won't touch on it in history, there was this moment at the dawn of the 20th century where the thought was, what if, instead of our poor working class, what if they didn't live in slums with disease? What if we put them in like little houses so they're not living in like these huge massive groups spreading like tuberculosis and lice and things like that? What if we just put each family in a little house, and all of these buildings would be fun and pretty and would have green spaces so that everyone could go outside and enjoy nature? A revolutionary concept at the time that thankfully has really caught on. I wish it would catch on a little more nowadays, because the other aspect was that it would be affordable. Just affordable little tiny homes in these neat structures. Yeah, it was like that was a revolutionary concept at the time. But let's get into the history of Berlin now. The earliest humans that would have lived around the Spree River here would have been about 60,000 BCE. The Lusatian culture would have settled in this area around 2000 BCE. Germanic tribes would have come in around 500 BCE. And Slavic peoples would come much later in the 7th century CE. I also should preface this is an overview, not a deep dive into Berlin's history. So yeah, we're just glossing over a lot of aspects of history, or else this video would be like 5 hours long. Anyway, in the 12th century, the Margraviate of Brandenburg formed and would eventually take over this area, make it part of their territory. Brandenburg then, and again, we'll get more into this when we cover Brandenburg, but it was ruled by the Hohenzollern family, and they were an electorate. I think eventually down the road, they became an electorate, which means that there were electors in like the noble classes who would get together and vote who would be the next king or ruler, what have you, instead of it being a direct descendant. Really common throughout most of what's now Germany, actually, and into the Holy Roman Empire, but that's we're getting sidetracked. This area here pretty much became Berlin officially in the year 1237, but it really wasn't just Berlin. It was actually two separate cities. One was called Berlin, one was called Cologne. So for a while it was called Berlin-Cologne, kind of like how I imagine Budapest was. It was actually three cities, but like two huge cities, Budapest, that came together over time. Zapping forward to the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. That war devastated a lot of places in what's now Germany, including Berlin. So when the 18th century dawned in the year 1701, changes were afoot here in many different ways. Brandenburg essentially is what I meant to say, essentially merged with Prussia, the Kingdom of Prussia, to make an even bigger Prussia. And they made Berlin the capital of Prussia. And yeah, things started moving and shaking in Berlin at this time. That's when all of the big castles were built that were mentioned on UNESCO. It's when the Brandenburg Gate was built. All of like the classic places in Berlin were built at this time. All the pretty palaces we're going to take a look at. Charlottesburg. Anyway, I forgot the German name. The Charlotte Palace. Google Earth later. It was built in this time. And like it said, UNESCO, the Enlightenment was very prevalent here in Berlin. Big center of German Enlightenment, European Enlightenment in general. And then once the Industrial Revolution came along, it really blossomed here in Berlin as well. In 1871, all of the German-speaking regions of Europe united to form the German Empire, pretty much-ish the Germany that we have today. That's a complicated topic. I was about to say not quite the borders today, but holy moly, it would change drastically throughout the 20th century. So it's roughly the Germany we have today, I'll say. Yes, the German Empire is created 1871. Berlin was the capital, and it was here in Berlin in 1918 that the Republic of Germany was declared, the Reichstag building. Of course, I did skip over World War I. It's not like Berlin, the city structure was deeply affected then, They didn't have, air raid bombings like they would eventually. I'm skipping ahead again. Slow down. All of the conflict was happening way over there and down there. Not so much here. But of course it did drastically affect Berlin during and after the war, with the loss of life and sanctions placed on Germany in the 1920s. Big economic downturn, but Berlin really floated through that and survived. In the very early 20th century, Berlin was really a center of great scientific minds. This is the time of Albert Einstein, Max Planck, and also to mention, throw in some LGBTQ history for you. There was Magnus Hirschfeld opened his Institute for Sexual Research here in Berlin, really studying sex and gender, cisgender, transgender, things like that. Of course, that would get shut down in the 1930s, and I think you know why. and research into that has never recovered since then. Very unfortunate. Let's get into it. In 1933, Adolf Hitler rose to prominence, and it was not long after that, like 2 months after he was officially made Chancellor of Germany, that the Reichstag building burned down. The Reichstag building was the main government building of Germany at that time. Think like the U.S. Capitol building. It was set on fire by an arsonist, but Hitler used that as a massive opportunity to say, oh, it was set on fire by the communists. And he used that as an excuse to round up communists and imprison them. I'm pretty sure the guy that did it was Dutch, I want to say. I don't think he was a communist. There's also a conspiracy that he was hired by the Nazi Party to light it on fire so that they could blame communists and Jews and whoever else they wanted to point the finger at. I don't think that's proven, but it's kind of a given that Hitler burned down the Reichstag building. But nonetheless, in the 1930s, after the rise of Hitler, he set about drastically reorganizing Berlin. Drastically, pretty much, mainly Tiergarten, the whole Mitte area was rearranged. And then especially in 1936, that's when Berlin hosted the Olympics. So they built a big Olympic park with all the stadiums that are still very much there in use today for FIFA and all of that, many sporting events. But sadly, Berlin would change forever in 1938 on Kristallnacht, which was, I can't remember the day, it was in November, which was when anti-Semitic hatred reached its tipping point. The cup spilled over, there were riots, smashed buildings, the night of broken glass it translates to, and that was really the beginning of the end for the Jewish community here in Berlin and throughout the rest of Germany. We're not going to get too much into what happens to the Jewish community throughout Germany and Europe, because I've been warned by YouTube that that word starting with an H is a no word, and I have to use it very carefully. But you all know. You all know. Plus, it's not very relaxing at all, and I'm here to relax you and maybe even put you to sleep. So we're not going to get into it, but you know what happens next. Allied bombing began over Berlin in 1943. It was quite devastating to most of the city throughout 43 and 44. 1945 saw the Battle of Berlin when the Soviets invaded from the east. It was the last major battle of World War II. Hitler wound up unaliving at the end of it, and it really marked the end of World War II in Europe. Now, the winners of World War II set about dividing up Berlin into 4. An American section, a British section, a French section, and a Soviet section. Among the 4 big winners there. The American, British, and French section, the western part of Berlin, really just merged into one big unit, while the Soviets in the east had their own chunk, which they were very determined to keep. Well, I shouldn't say Berlin. All of Germany was divided up, but Berlin was mostly, I believe, American and British, but mostly American. The Soviets had the east of Germany, is what I should be saying, not Berlin exactly, but they had the east of Berlin as well. They were very dead set on making East Germany, Eastern Berlin, a Soviet socialist superpower controlled by the Soviet Union, now known as Russia. And of course, the Americans, British, French, etc., were determined on bringing aspects of capitalism and democracy to the west of Germany and their bit of Western Berlin. That cup tipped over in, 1948. It's 1948. There were a lot of disagreements between the Americans and the Soviets. This was the dawn of the Cold War, right? This was probably the first major conflict of the Cold War, called cold because there were no actual battles between the US and the Soviet Union. They were proxy battles, and this was kind of one of them, in a sense. The tipping point was that the US was implementing a new currency in Germany since wasn't it the Reichsmark exploded? So they created the Deutschmark. And the Soviet Union said, no, we wanted to make our own currency. We don't want your currency. And that was the final straw. The Soviet Union closed off the borders of Berlin, pretty much trapping the Americans / allies who were in the west of Berlin. There was no getting out. Brandenburg was part of East Germany. So the Berlin airlift began, with planes flying over and dropping supplies so that they wouldn't starve to death. That would eventually be lifted once the Soviets realized that the blockade wasn't going to work as long as they could drop supplies via airplane over West Berlin. So they were like, okay, listen, you can go in and out from East Berlin. You're not trapped. But people in East Germany, East Berlin, they cannot go to West Berlin and West Germany. And to solidify that, the Berlin Wall was built in 1961, a literal concrete wall running through the city with checkpoints and watchtowers and barbed wire. It was a real symbol of East German and Soviet lifestyle, I suppose. Very brutal, very cruel. There were two famous speeches from American presidents in Berlin criticizing this. One was in 1963 by John F. Kennedy, JFK, in his Ich bin ein Berliner speech, often regarded as one of his best speeches. He was a great orator. He had great speechwriters. But that one had a little bit of flack because a Berliner is also a jelly donut. So you could also translate Ich bin ein Berliner, I am from Berlin, as I am a jelly donut. It was a ha-ha moment in history. But another speech was from Ronald Reagan in 1987, and he came to Berlin and said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. That became a real motto for the end of the Cold War, the very tail end of the Cold War, because the wall certainly would fall in 1989. I was just talking with my sister about this because she has a vague memory of this. I do not. I was 4 years old. She's a year and a half older than me, so she kind of remembers. Evidently, our mom woke us up in the middle of the night, rushed us to the TV where they were showing news footage of people smashing down the wall, running to both sides, dancing, celebrating, singing, David Hasselhoff and all of that. And our mom was telling us, you have to remember this. This is a historical moment. The world's changing forever. I have no memory of this moment. My sister vaguely does. But apparently I watched the Berlin Wall come down, but I have no memory of it at all. It was the middle of the night. But nevertheless, the Berlin Wall came down very ceremoniously, very joyfully on both sides. And Berlin and Germany would be reunited officially in 1990. Berlin goes through yet another massive facelift, as it just seems to do for the past 300 years, just gets completely redecorated, fixing up parts that were damaged from World War II, damaged from Soviet times, building over parts where the wall and checkpoints were, so on and so forth. And Berlin today is a beautiful, thriving metropolis with amazing culture, amazing food, amazing people, amazing nightlife, everything you can imagine, incredible museums, like I said. Oh my gosh, there are thousands of museums in Berlin for all kinds of things. It's incredible. And not like little dinky, here's like a toy wooden soldier museum. It's like museums for actual, like, very important moments in history, science, art, you name it. Incredible. So many incredible sights to see in Berlin today. There's one sad blip in its history. In 2016, there was a no word attack. You can imagine, fill in the blank, from, as we say on the channel, to avoid no words and to keep you relaxed, people who blow things up on purpose. This man who was with ISIL drove a truck through a Christmas market. Devastating. It seems like those kind of attacks are on the rise lately. It seems. It just happened in the United States this past New Year's Eve in New Orleans. But it's not like that's a defining moment in Berlin history. It is a sad moment, but it's not like that completely threw the whole city into chaos and it's still recovering to this day. No, it's a beautiful, thriving, wonderful city. And a lot of you watching, I know, have commented excited to see this because you live there. Hello. Guten Tag. Anyway, if I feel like I missed something major that you want me to go over, or I didn't go over that I should have, I should say, drop it down in the comments. If it's really, really good, I'll tag it so it's at the top. But like I said, this was just an overview, nothing too detailed. Because there's so much history here, so much to talk about. I just cliff noted it for you. But that being said, there's so much history. There's also so much to show you on Google Earth. I'm sure I'm going to forget to show you something. If I do, I'll leave a comment below as well, being like, you should go on Google Earth and look at this. I forgot. Because there's like 10 plus different things I want to show you. So let me stop yapping and let's head over to the tablet. Here we are in Berlin. Let's zoom out so you can see exactly where we are in the world. Nothing's loading. There we go. Oh, that scared me. Here's Germany. There's Berlin, which you can see just how big it is. You can still see the outline of it. There, it's not a tiny dot. It's a big circle. Germany, Denmark to the north. We've got the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Luxembourg's right there. Switzerland, which we're going to Switzerland next week, so stay tuned. Austria, Czechia, Poland. All around it. And there's beautiful Berlin. And you can even see from above just how green this place is. But let's start off in Mitte and work our way out. We gotta start at the Brandenburg Gate. The Brandenburger Tor, you can see right there. There we go. The Brandenburg Gate. Iconic. Probably like when you think of Berlin, I'm sure most of you think of the Brandenburg Gate first. Christmas time. See this cool statue up here. Did you know that Napoleon stole this statue? I didn't mention how pretty. It's a double rainbow all the way across the sky. Napoleon invaded Berlin in, I think it was 1808. In the very early 1800s when Napoleon was Napoleoning. He stole the statue as bragging rights and obviously was returned to Berlin and its rightful spot there after Napoleon was no longer Napoleoning around Europe. But yeah, beautiful light shows. This is where Berlin does their New Year's Eve fireworks. The spirit loves Berlin. We'll look at that in a minute. But yeah, lots of little coaches around, I'm sure, for tourists to explore this part of Berlin. There's a lot of stuff happening here. Let's start with the Reichstag building, which was all redone after World War II. It's no longer the, main government building. It's now just pretty to look at, and they built this big dome on top that you can come up and look at the city above the old Reichstag building. Pretty neat. This is the Tiergarten over here. You got the Victory Monument over here. Schloss Bellevue. Bellevue Palace is where the president lives. And then over here is where the actual government is. No, that's the House of Culture right here. Can I say this in German? The Bundes. Oh, there we go. German Chancellery. The Bundes. So on and so forth. This is where the actual government of Germany is located. Oh, there's Angela Merkel right there. Former Chancellor. So on and so forth. We're going to only look at the first couple of pictures because I have so much to show you. What else is over here? We have this, the memorial for the, it has a very long name. I think if I tap it, it'll say it in English. There it is in German, yep. Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe. And it's very haunting. It's all of these very daunting blocks. Do you see it? There aren't really many that great pictures here in the slideshow, but you get the idea, right? Underneath this is the actual museum. You can see here, you can go underneath all the blocks and see exhibits. But yeah, I guess there are good pictures. That's a pretty neat, like, modern art picture, I suppose. It's very modern memorial, isn't it? Really haunting. Memorials over here in Tiergarten as well. Over here, we also have, let's see, hopefully if we zoom out, we can see them. Potsdamer Platz was completely rebuilt after the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's like the skyscraper section of Berlin, all of the big business buildings there. Here you can see, not there, but nearby, I don't remember where it is, but you should be able to see it from above. Here, one of those apartment blocks that they mentioned on UNESCO. See these big circles here are all apartment buildings. And then they built the park in the middle and around here so that people could have little apartment homes with green space. That's pretty cool. Really terrible pictures of it though. Here is Checkpoint Charlie, which was one of the spots, like the main spot, where people could travel from west to east. Many tried to travel east to west and did not survive it. None of this is the same. This is all kind of reconstruction. I think like 90% of the signage and buildings and stuff is all reconstructed. But this was the spot. Hard to believe when you look at all the modern buildings where people could travel west to east, and many lost their lives. There's a piece of the wall right there. We'll look at a bunch of other pieces of the wall. Memorial there. Checkpoint Charlie. It's so named because, I don't know, do other countries do this where there's like, I guess they do it a lot in the military. C is for Charlie, so this was Checkpoint C as opposed to Checkpoint A, Checkpoint B. So like, C is for Charlie. I'm describing it terribly. Let's just move on. We can also look at, I'm trying to remember where everything is. My goodness. Oh, let's look at Museum Island since we're right here. So, the Pergamon Museum and the Neues Museum are the two that I would want to go to the most. Actually, let's start here because this is where, I'm sorry, Google Earth, I'm sorry I tapped two things really fast and now you're having a hard time loading. The Neues Museum, the new museum, is where all of the Egyptian artifacts are. Germany in like 1880s to 1900s, 1910s went through their Egypt phase, as we all did when we were preteens learning about history. Give this a like if you had an Egypt phase. I know I did when I was 11. They went through an extreme Egypt phase, started excavating stuff, shipping it all off to Germany. One of which is sadly not in this slideshow. Look at that pretty eye of Horus. Not in this slideshow, but you know that bust of Nefertiti? That when you think like Nefertiti, you picture that bust. It's here in this museum because it was found by a German archaeologist. I wish there was a picture here of it, but we all know what it looks like. It's extremely iconic. In my opinion, this is the best Egyptian museum besides the Cairo one, of course. You can't compare to that. And here at the Pergamon Museum is after the Egypt phase, they went through a Babylon phase. And we can find lots of cool ancient sites like the Ishtar Gate. So I believe most of this is reconstruction because the Ishtar Gate was built like 4,000 years ago. But many Babylonian artifacts were brought to Germany. The bull there in the gate. The Ishtar Gate was the main gate into Babylon. And I'd really love to see it. They've rebuilt one in Babylon. I've already covered it on the channel, actually. I'll throw up Babylon up there so you can see actual Babylon and the reconstructed Ishtar Gate. But this is probably the actual one here. Or part of the walls, at least. Babylonian lions there. Really beautiful. And this is my number one place that I'm coming to when I visit Berlin. And it's not an if, it's a when. I just don't know when. Heading here to Museum Island first thing. Here's the pretty church I mentioned. There we go. Look how pretty. So like old-timey in the best way. Really, really beautiful. Oh, but you know what else is a really neat church? To show you over here is the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, which is significant because it was bombed out during World War II and they've left it as is. They have not renovated it. But from the looks of it, they still do services here, which is pretty impressive. Maybe in a building nearby, but they have left this church as is since it was bombed out in the 1940s. Really quite haunting, isn't it? At Christmas time. Yeah, it looks like it's still in use. So that's pretty impressive. Maybe in this building? I don't know what this building is. One of you Berliners need to tell me. And some modern art nearby. Let's see. There's some other places I wanted to show you bits of the Berlin Wall, but I have to remember where they are. Pretty sure it was up here. Yeah, you can see it. So they left this chunk intact. It's looking closer. You can kind of see on the 3D the walls and the watchtower there. Berlin Wall Memorial. All graffitied over. Now bits of the wall are still standing as memorials, not like actual functional walls, you know. But beautiful memorials here. That's some weird street art. Ugh. There's a memorial here for those who lost their lives trying to cross over it. And lots of photographs. But a much more interesting bit of the wall is racking my brain to remember where everything is because I have so many things to show you. Thought it was over here. It's not popping up. I'm probably completely off. There's also, let's look at this while I'm looking at it, the Jewish Museum here, which to me is more like half museum, half modern art piece. It's a gorgeous building, very daunting, almost brutalist style, but artsy. With lots of also very modern memorials as well. Let's see. I'm like not great pictures, but these are beautiful photos. I usually look at Google Earth when I'm like all cozy in bed about to go to sleep. And I'm winding down, so that's what I remember. There's my grandpa. Leonard Nimoy is not my grandpa. One time when he was still alive and on Twitter, he posted that if you don't have a grandpa in your life, I'll be your grandpa. So Leonard Nimoy became Let's see, Anne Frank over here. Yeah, other famous German Jews. But yeah, I need to show you. I don't remember where it is. You can see lots more parks over there. You see all the museums popping up? There's like too many museums. I'm really upset because this place popped up. There it is. It was over here. I didn't go north enough. The East Side Gallery is a beautiful little stretch of the Berlin Wall because it's covered in beautiful art. And in fact, it is the largest outdoor art display in the world, I think. Really cool. I like this one. Different walls around the world. Moscow, like the Kremlin, all red. China, the Great Wall. Everywhere, they're all green and beautiful. And then Berlin is like stone, sad, gray. Really amazing. But yeah, if I zoom in, you can really see the strip of the wall there. The Berliner Mauer. All the way down. Little museum over there as well. I wanted to show you before I forgot. Oh wait, I'm still remembering all these things I want to show you. I have to show you. Gosh, I have to remember where they are. Dun, dun, dun. I bet if I go in 3D, I can find it. Because we need to look at. The tower. There we go. So this TV tower was built by the Soviets, and it's cool, so they kept it really daunting in the 3D. Whoa, there it goes. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, I'll stop. But yeah, this is like part of the iconic what am I trying to say? Skyline of Germany. I'm trying to say skyline. My mouth really wanted to say skyscrapers. You can see the shadow of it there. The view from up. Oh, you wouldn't catch me up this high. No, thank you. It's a little too big for me, too tall for me. No, thank you. But the Alexanderplatz is over here. Another important little cultural area. But I think, if I recall, all of these pictures are just like of the tower that we just looked at. Yeah, so. All right. Let's hit up some palaces. There's a Schloss over there, but not that one. We are going to look up. It's near the Brandenburg Gate. Where am I? I'm so lost. The city is way too big. Let's reorient ourselves. Whoa. There we are. It's like, where are we? The earth is upside down. There we go. There's Museum Island. There's Tiergarten, Brandenburg Tor. And then if we go... I still don't remember where it is. Whoops. I thought it was nearby here. I thought it was like literally right here. But I wasn't thinking of the... Can I say this now? Bundeskanzleramt. Oh gosh. Oh my goodness, stop that. The palace. The big palace. The big Charlotte Palace. I thought it was right over here. Let's search it. Hold on. Let's see if it'll just pop up. Not Charlotteburg. Charlotteburg Palace. Yeah. Let's see how far off I was. It might take like 5 minutes to load. Oh my gosh, I was so far off. I'd have never found it. Wow, I thought it was near the Tiergarten. I was completely wrong. was it? It was next to something I was looking at before, and I was like, oh, I just remember it's next to that. And it wasn't at all. So as you can see, this is one of the many opulent palaces. Look at that garden. And of course the big like woods outside. They could release deer in here and hunt them. And then have like civilized time in the garden. But this place is like outrageously decorated. And it's all restored. This place, I think, caught on fire during the bombing in World War II. So all of the interior is completely redone, which is insane because look at this detail. It's outrageous. Not a fan of this. This is a really ugly ceiling painting. Maybe it's still being restored. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. But holy moly, that's outrageous. I feel like looking through pictures of Charlottenburg Palace is like when you're looking at those like crazy Zillow listings that go viral. And it's like, what am I looking at? This is insane. Pretty swan. Beautiful gardens. Little statues. What? It's outrageous. Can you imagine just like this is your home and this is your normal and this is boring? Can't relate. Can't relate at all. It's too much. It's too much. Look at this. Outrageous. Alright. I also wanted to show you. I have so much I wanted to show you, but we head out to the Grunewald, the Green Woods. I want to show you this hill here called Teufelsee. This is a man-made hill that was made out of rubble in World War II from all the bombings. Not Teufelsee, that's the lake. Teufelsberg. That's what I'm looking right. There we go. Just forget I said that. Teufelsberg. Teufelsee is the lake. Teufelsberg, or Devil Mountain. This is all rubble that was buried on top. And there's an interesting structure on top. Let's take a look. It is all abandoned and ugly now. Look at this. But this was, look at all the graffiti. Wow. This was a listening station that the Americans built. Oh, it's beautiful art. This isn't the slideshow I saw. Teufelsberg. A listening station where they built these radio towers. This is what I saw. And would listen. That's one up, like one of the major graffiti groups in Berlin. Look, all torn apart now, all abandoned, of course, but people would sit here and intercept Soviet radio signals and listen in. Can you imagine? Now, of course, it's covered in beautiful art. It's one thing I've noticed poking around Berlin these last couple of days on Google Earth is that the graffiti, the street art, is stunning here. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm a big fan of, like, there's graffiti, there's like tags, which is kind of like this, like just like writing your name. Sure, it's artistic, but it's just kind of like, but then there's art. There's a way to make this into art, and I love that. I love really well done graffiti. I hope you can't hear my cat snoring. He's snoring kind of loud. But, yeah. So there's like 500 billion other things to look at. I would highly encourage you, if you've not done so before, to poke around Berlin. I've had the best time doing so. I'm kind of sad that this is all done and I'm filming it and it's all over, because maybe I should just poke around some more, even if I don't need to, because I've had such a fun time exploring Berlin. See, I knew it was right there. I was like, it's near the Brandenburg Gate. Where is it? I must have wandered off in the wrong direction, getting completely lost. Could you not? Anyway, I'm trying to find one more quick thing. You know what? Let's go back to Museum Island and look at another museum. If I can find it. Can't be that hard to find Museum Island. upper gate. You always start there. Work your way around. I've lost. How in the world? Here it is. It just jumped out at me. Let's look at, I think this museum's really nice, the Bota Museum. Yeah, all these buildings are so pretty. But let's look through this while I end the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this style of content, please consider subscribing, as this is an ongoing series on my channel. We're going through every corner of the world in alphabetical order, which means next we are heading to Bermuda, another place I really, really wanted to go to because it just is so pretty. It looks so relaxing. And I'm going to show you some fun Google Earth, including under the ocean pictures, so be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you're still awake. And don't forget to drop me a comment down below. My goal this year is to respond to every single comment I get, unless it's horrible and I'll delete it. But all the normal people comments that I get. So, let's strike up a conversation. Let's say hello. Let's talk about Berlin. Maybe if you live there, be like, come over, stay at my house. And I'll be like, I'm on my way. But anyway, I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational. Let's look at this, just Berlin. Just Berlin. And I hope that you have a good night. Good night. Look at that Christmas market. This is my pair of sleep phones, pajamas for your ears, and it's essentially a headband with little speakers in it, so you can pop it on your head and comfortably lay down on your pillow and listen to binaural ASMR as you fall asleep. It's all dusty, but that's good because this is machine washable. You can just pop out the little headphones there and wash this. I guess I have to do that next. Cat hairs all over it. I use this pretty much every night. It's perfect for traveling. And actually, here's a story for you. This is not my original pair of sleep phones. I went and visited one of my best friends, brought my sleep phones with me, and accidentally left it behind. So my friend says, oh, don't worry, I'll ship it to you, it's fine. But then she tells me the next day, actually I'm not, because I used it, and I love it, and I'm keeping it, and I just bought you a new pair, I'm sending it to your home. So this is the pair she sent me. My original ones are still with my bestie. She kept it. It's so funny. But I swear by these things. I sleep so well with them. They don't bother me either. I have chronic migraine. I have to be careful with what I put on my head because if it's too tight or makes me too sweaty, I get a migraine. This has never done that. It's incredibly comfortable. The sound quality is awesome. And I just pass out and sleep so well when I'm wearing these. I can't recommend it enough. So if you would like to get your pair, I have an affiliate link down in the description box. It would very much help out my channel. Don't forget to uninstall Honey before you purchase. And you can get your own pair of sleep phones, pajamas for your ears, and sleep comfortably and sound. They have all sorts of different styles. They have a wireless version. I just have the wire one just because that was just what I had before she bought me the same pair. But they have all sorts of different kinds for all sorts of different types of people. So be sure to check them out and sleep well.